Hey guys, welcome back to another Bible in the Backyard. And we are still talking about parables of the New Testament that Jesus speaks to us. I hope you guys had a great Memorial Day weekend. I know I got away with my dad and my son, and we went up to our family's cabin up in Tennessee. We had no cell service. We got to play in a creek. We got to play in a boundary. It was awesome. Just getting away and kind of refocusing and coming back and just feeling refreshed. And it was nice. Absolutely nice. Much needed. Much needed. But we are still in the book of Matthew. And Jesus speaks this parable right after he speaks about the sower and the seed, which is what I talked to you guys about last time. So we're still in the 13th chapter of Matthew, and Matthew is one of the 4 Gospels in the New Testament. It is also the first Gospel in the New Testament. In the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they tell the story of Jesus' life, and each from different perceptions, and each with a different topic and kind of theme in mind when it comes to the person that wrote it. So Matthew, I'm not getting into why he wrote it or who he is or what he does, but in this book of Matthew, he kind of breaks down the first several different parables that Jesus speaks, and he explains how Jesus explains them to the people, and then how he explains them to his disciples. And it's very, very, very different, and I absolutely love how it's broken down, because he leaves the mystery, how he teaches, he kind of leaves it as a mystery. And then he explains the mystery to his disciples, so they can know, and so they can go out and they can teach and preach the word even after Jesus is gone. So if you join me in the 13th chapter of Matthew, in the 24th verse, we're going to talk about the wheat and the tares. And it says, "Another parable he put forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servant of the household came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou not sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares?" Why does it have tares? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root will also the wheat with them. So when you gather up the tares, you're going to mess up the wheat also. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at the time of the harvest, I will say unto the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Skipping down a few verses, we're going to go to verse 36. Then Jesus sent the multitude away. So he speaks unto them these parables, and then he sends them away, and so he's going to break it down to his disciples. In verse 36, it says, Then Jesus sent the multitude away, and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. And he answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, so he that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. It's Jesus. The field is the world, so this is the earth that we live on. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is at the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be at the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out all of his kingdom and all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire, and there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the son of the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. You might have some questions. I don't have all the answers, but I do have an answer about the tares. Basically, what's a tare? We know that the wheat is good and that the wheat can feed and it can turn into multiple different things. A tare, which is a weed, or probably darnel, which resembles wheat during the early stages of growth, but it's actually poisonous. Roman law prohibits sowing darnel in another's field, which suggests Jesus' story was realistic, and these are in my notes kind of below the stories that I read here in my Bible. It says the root systems, which is where he talks about while you gather up the tares, you're gonna mess up the wheat also. You're gonna end up pulling up more wheat than you are gonna be getting rid of the tares. It says the root systems of the wheat and the darnel become so intertwined with each other as the crops mature, which makes it difficult to uproot the weeds without damaging the wheat. And I would feel like the tares today that are sowed even amongst us as amongst humans, it'd be doubt, it'd be fear, it'd be weaknesses, it would be us thinking that we're not enough. It's thinking that we need to rely on something else to bring us joy, or something else that we can tangibly hold on to, that would be like, I don't know, a dog. Granted, dogs always bring joy and happiness, but I mean, it would be doubt. Those would be the tares, like how we think that we need something else in order to make us happy, and ultimately Jesus is what does it for us. And so I feel like God's plan with us kind of in this is to still step out boldly with him, and him taking the lead. But ultimately this parable of the wheat and the tares, it's speaking of the final judgment. It's speaking of the end of the world, when Jesus comes back, when God sends his son back, lets us go live in paradise with him. This is speaking even after we pass away and we go rest and we are at peace. And it's kind of even hard to think about what's going to happen even after I'm gone sometimes. For me, but our fate, it's kind of what I wrote down when I was studying this. Our fate, our eternal fate, isn't based on good works. It's not based on us being a good person. It's not based on It's not based on any of that. It's not based on being this perfect human being that doesn't make any mistakes and any of this, that, and the other. It's ultimately based on a decision on whether or not we want Jesus in our lives. Jesus has already done all the work for us. He's already gone to the cross. He's already given up his life for us. He's done all the hard work. He took the beating. He carried the cross. He was on the cross. He gave his life for us so that we could have this decision on whether or not we are going to choose him or not. And that's what ultimately it comes down to. It comes down to a choice. Whether or not you want Jesus to take the lead in your life, or whether or not you don't. Jesus, he wants all of us. He does. He wants me. He wants you. He wants every single person in this world. and how it says that the tares are the children of the wicked one. The tares um, are the devil. The tares are the doubt. The tares are this I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. And don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm not fearful, that I'm not doubtful, that I don't think that I'm good enough, or I don't think that I'm, this, that, and the other. And I'm not saying that I'm not a good person or that I don't make mistakes, because I do. I do. And that's why I need Jesus so much. Because sometimes I look at these stories and I'm like, just, it's simple. Like, just choose Jesus. And then sometimes I look at my own life and I'm like, oh, wait a second. That's me right there too. But ultimately his hands are open and they're ready and waiting. And really the question comes down to, in verse 30, it says, let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest I'll say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in a bundle to burn them. Do you want to be in that bundle? Or gather the wheat into my barn. Now, I kind of wrote this down here, and it says, the barn equals heaven. The barn equals peace. The barn equals God's glory. The barn equals Jesus, and it equals everything that goes along with it. Love. And the fire is hell, is Satan, is being whatnot. And sometimes God speaks to us, and I read this in a thing this morning, and God spoke all this to us. It's right here in the Bible. God wrote this to us because sometimes how it's written, it's kind of like lyrics in a song, or lyrics in this, lyrics in that. Sometimes we like songs because, at least I do anyways, I like songs because of their lyrics, ultimately. Sometimes they have a good melody and good whatever, how they're produced and whatnot, but ultimately good songs that speak to me and speak to my heart and I get something out of them is because they were written well. I love stories that are written well. I love reading stories, fiction, nonfiction, whatnot, that are just written well. But God speaks to us through his word. God speaks to us through a whisper. He's not going to basically shout and say, this is me, I'm right here. He sometimes speaks in our darkest moments. He speaks when we are at the highest point in our lives. Sometimes he speaks to us just day to day. But how he explains this mystery, which is basically saying, choose me. Please choose me, because then you're going to be safe. You're going to be safe. You're going to be this. I'm not saying that everything's going to be peachy keen here on earth. Do not try and take my words and try to spin them, because we think that sometimes it can be this, oh, but I have Jesus, so life should be easy. That it's not that way. Life has its ups and downs for every single person. But ultimately, in the final day when Jesus comes back, whether or not we're here, whether or not we're gone, what's your decision going to be? What is your decision going to be? And this is a decision that comes at different times and different points in people's lives. It could be a 7-year-old. It could be a 12-year-old. It could be a 21-year-old. It could be a 42-year-old. It could be a 78-year-old. It can be an 84-year-old. There are so many different times and different things, that different ways that God comes into our lives, and how he speaks to us and when he speaks to us is so different between each individual person. But the ultimate question is, Are you a wheat? Are you going to be harvested and you're going to be put in the barn for safekeeping? Are you going to go to heaven? Or are you going to be a tare and you're going to be a weed and are you going to be burned? And that's ultimately your choice. God's done the heavy lifting. What's your decision going to be? See ya.